Hello, this is Eric, and as you know, Hollywood ruins everything. Pixar is amazing at designing fun and cute characters for the films they make, and they are also equally amazing at saying so much without anyone needing to say a word. They're also good with making vast worlds and lessons that they teach their characters. By the end of the story, these lessons are fairly obvious. But sometimes that obvious message seems a little overbearing. Or does it? Well, maybe just in this film. We'll see. This is WAAAAAALL-E. The first 10 minutes of the film are devoted to introducing both the setting and WAAAAAAALL-E himself. Earth has basically devolved into a big pile of trash, and humanity has escaped for the stars. WAAAAAALL-E is the last remaining trash compactor robot left behind in order to clean up all the trash, which is enough to create several towers as tall as skyscrapers. Everything in this opening goes slowly, but it does make everything immediately clear. With the use of a few strategically placed advertisements and newspaper clippings, we know what's happened to the humans, and the only one left is WAAAAAALL-E. He's a curious and caring fellow, doing his endless tasks without really knowing why, and that's fine with him. He's also a collector. He gathers up everything that interests him and brings it back home. He has multiples of some things, and other things that are quite unique, like the tape he has of people dancing and holding hands and being romantic. WAAAAAALL-E is shown to be lonely. Poor little guy. Things change when a spaceship lands and drops off Eve, a probe robot who immediately begins searching for something. WAAAAAALL-E, being very lonely, keeps attempting to interact with her, and I have to say this is probably the part of the movie that I liked least. I think this scene was supposed to be some form of courtship, but the romantic music, the frequent injuries of WAAAAAALL-E, who we actually like, and if you've never seen this film before, you really don't have an idea of what Eve is doing. It's obvious later, but in the meantime we're just watching WAAAAAALL-E get beaten up, scared to death, and rejected. At least that changes when Eve takes a break from her job after a great deal of frustration, to put it lightly. How is that electromagnet still working? Never mind. It's just a movie. It doesn't need to be realistic. She then introduces herself to WAAAAAALL-E, and he shows off quite a few human gestures that I guess he learned from advertisements? WAAAAAALL-E takes her home and shows off his hobbies, and Eve shows an interest, though she's designed to be some sort of super robot or something. I can just imagine the scientist who made her yelling, "Eve is not designed for socialization!" But socialize she does, and it's apparent that she thinks his clumsiness is cute. But then WAAAAAALL-E shows her a plant he found, and her stomach opens, and she eats it. For some reason, the lights also go out. And then, gosh, he gets hurt even more. Does he really need to be hurt so much? Is that really endearing? I like him just fine, and I don't enjoy watching him get injured in stupid ways. Like, they literally had to plan and animate him getting hit with lightning twice. Really? No one asked, hey, isn't this a little cruel? But that all ends with Eve getting taken back on a return ship. WAAAAAALL-E sees his new romantic interest getting taken. Look, I'll buy robots falling in love. I'll even buy that some equipment still works, even after we learn later that humans have abandoned the Earth for 700 years. I will not buy those little pincers holding onto a shuttle exiting the Earth's atmosphere. That's just unrealistic. So WAAAAAALL-E holds onto the shuttle for dear life, because it's either going at light speed or taking hundreds of years to reach its destination, and arrives at the Axiom, a sort of Noah's Ark for humans in space. We are introduced to Mo, a robot whose main job is to clean foreign contaminants. It's a job he takes with grave seriousness, to the point where he even jumps off the robot tracks to do it. He does eventually play a role in the story, but for now, his only job is to be hilariously mad at dirt. Meanwhile, WALL-E follows Eve up to meet the captain's robot secretary. WALL-E gives the secretary a little wave, and the secretary is immediately fascinated with the new gesture. Then we go up to the elevator, to where the autopilot and captain are. The captain is a man who seems trapped. He bemoans having nothing to do. That is, until he is told a probe droid has come back positive, and they might need to go back to Earth. This is about where my mind started substituting real-life analogs to the situation, because Pixar's robot expressions were just too appropriate for them. Eve's basically a girl about to get a promotion to senior management, so she has to do good on her assignment. But then, her crazy friend comes in. "I told you not to come to my work!" And then she opens up, and there's no plans, and she's like, "WALL-E, that paper was important! What did you do with that? My promotion depended on that!" She is declared defective, and WALL-E is declared filthy and in need of cleaning. Luckily, WALL-E shakes the captain's hand, leaving dirt behind, which gets the captain interested in Earth, which he looks up on a computer. While Eve's body language is saying, "Thanks, WALL-E," the secretary that we saw earlier is enthusiastically waving. He was just so darn happy to learn that. The robot pair are taken to the repair ward, which is sort of the analog to an insane asylum. Multiple defective robots are basically going nuts inside of these little rooms. Eva's treating this like a medical checkup, but what WALL-E sees is a horror story going on in the background. WALL-E accidentally uses Eve's arm to shoot the control panel in the back, and anyone who watched Star Wars knows that all defenses immediately turn off if you shoot the control panel. So suddenly, all of these defective robots are on the loose, and they run right into robot security. I really love all the little gestures and nonverbal communication of the robots, and there are two golden examples here of how much is said by these robots in so little. The first is when WALL-E is at the forefront of this insane robot mob while they're being confronted with security, and this little robot just pushes him forward. He's the responsible one, he's the leader, get him and not us, please! Really, this wasn't necessary. It's not like those security robots actually care who's responsible, but one of the little crazy ones pushes him forward anyways, because hey, maybe if they arrest him, they won't go after us. The second example is shortly after Eve catches up and they run off. One of the security droids has taken a picture of Eve and WALL-E and has put out a bulletin warning of rogue robots, and she says, "WALL-E!" And in that one word, she's basically saying, "I was about to get a promotion today, and everything was going fine, but then you showed up, and we caused a breakout at a mental asylum, and now we're on the run from the cops!" Yes, all that ridiculously specific information was inside that one word with that tone, and it is glorious. The rest of the movie is pretty good about this as well, it's just these two instances are the best example of how they did more with less. Eve attempts to send WALL-E back to Earth in an escape pod, but they find that a security droid is trying to jettison the plant that Eve brought back. They manage to rescue the plant, Eve kisses WALL-E, and they start floating around in space with WALL-E's infinite fire extinguisher. Those things only really spray, like, max 20 seconds? Eric, stop ruining it with your realism. Okay. The captain has basically gone on a Wikipedia binge that somehow went from Earth to hoedown dancing. That's what happens when you don't stop clicking on links. Coincidentally, he starts learning about dancing at about the same time that Eve and WALL-E dance out in space. Wow, impeccable timing. Anyways, Wally and Eve slip into a door, leaving this poor repair guy to get blasted off the ship when they return to Earth later. Yeah, I know, too much realism. It's just a movie. Wally wants to hold hands, but Eve's got priorities. It's kind of funny how two robots that are designed to understand human behavior try to figure out each other. So, Eve returns the plant to the captain. He starts shouting off his environmentalist message. I understand this is a real emotional moment for this guy, but I can't help but hear environmental message, environmental, environmental. Don't do nothing or it will be too late.
Out there is our home auto, and it's in trouble. I can't just sit here and do nothing. That's all I've ever done. That's all anyone on this blasted ship has ever done. Nothing.
On the axiom, you will survive.
I don't want to survive. I want to live!
Eve is meanwhile shown how much her work life has been hurting the ones who care about her. Man, I sorta want to see this other story being built up in my head. Even if I don't, I got this. The autopilot who's basically HAL 9000, but a wheel, hurts Wally, who showed up, and tosses our heroes down into the trash heap. They nearly get tossed out into space, which is all dramatic and everything, but we've already seen that's not a big deal. Guess we're ignoring that. But just in time, the hero we needed but didn't deserve arrives. Mo, following the trail of foreign contaminants, gets stuck in the door just long enough that our heroes can get back inside. Thank you for that contribution to the plot, Mo. Now, become another background character that we never care about again. Eve doesn't care about the plant anymore. She's seen the error of being too obsessed with work, and she now tries to devote herself to Wally with his broken ribs and whatnot. Okay, that's a little bit of an exaggeration. He's not human. I'll try to fantasize a little less. His power system is broken, but coincidentally, they can find new parts for him if they can get to Earth. That means she can do her work and have a personal life. Ho ho ho! The captain somehow becomes an engineer in less than a few seconds to get a message out. I mean, he's the captain, and maybe he should know how to do things like that? But we've established that he does nothing, so... what? Yeah, I know. Realism. So the captain battles the autopilot, and it all ends up in a crazy situation where Wally is holding up this machine while it's crushing him. If they can get the plant into the machine, the Axiom will immediately turn around and go back to Earth. They manage to get the plant in, with some help, and the ship returns to Earth while Eve holds Wally dying in her arms. When they get there, she immediately shoots off to Wally's house and replaces all of his broken parts. It takes a little while for all his systems to reboot, and so it almost seems like he forgets Eve momentarily. But with the power of love, or just the minor quirks of technology, he remembers everything, and they can be together forever. Humanity rebuilds, and it's a happy ending. Now, that is an extremely short and simple version of the story. Alongside this cute story about robots and deciding to pursue their personal lives over their careers, there are some pretty heavy-handed messages about consumerism, corporations, obesity, social media, and how amazing the world can be if you just turn off your screen and look around at the outside world, the cost of freedom and individuality in a utopia, and the environment. There are two human characters demonstrating what happens when you're free from the Matrix. I mean, don't participate in the corporate machine. Heck, the whole choosing of personal lives over careers may just even be a bigger part of the whole anti-corporation, anti-consumerism message. I mean, other than the fact that Eve was sort of designed to bring the corporation down, and a real corporation wouldn't have something designed to do that. Quite honestly, the personal stories of Eve and WALL-E aren't really that connected to the rest of the story. All these other themes and messages are maybe tangentially related, at best, even if they coincidentally connect at points. WALL-E and Eve don't actually care about the environment or consumerism or anything like that, so it sort of feels like all those background messages are really distracting, especially since environmentalism is unfortunately so toxic a subject in America that it practically screamed, "I have an agenda!" Yeah, I agree with your agenda, just please get it out of my face. Stuff like this doesn't help. It is definitely unfortunate that that's the case because it's a good message, but I'd almost rather the story have been about the humans with human protagonists if we were going to go full on into that environmental anti-consumerism message to begin with. So, because the messages are disconnected from our main characters, and the messages are so inflamed as to be very distracting, I'm sort of the opinion that they should have just left those messages with everything else that the humans left behind. Earth has been completely and utterly trashed. There are B&L advertisements everywhere. Just that beginning gets all the messages across. You don't need to beat it in with a 2x4 and two extraneous characters that no one cares about. Still, I did like this movie, even though the scenes on Earth were slow and somewhat painful, and after that, half of it I was happy, but the other half I had to stop myself from yelling at it for being unrealistic at times. Because honestly, despite all of the problems, I think that the story of WALL-E and Eve, with all the talent that Pixar put into them and their robot pals, does make up for them. At least, so long as you can ignore the other stuff. So that was WALL-E. I'd like to know what you think, so please leave your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the little bell button to receive notifications whenever we put out a new video, and have a nice day.